Hey everyone, this is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of That Tutorials and More. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss out on any new videos, and check the video description for a link to the That mobile learning library app. Inside of our app, you can access all of our free and exclusive tutorials in our neatly organized content libraries, as well as subscribe to access our various masterclasses and exclusive communities. In this tutorial, I am going to be showing you quick and easy how to sublimate neoprene car coasters. This particular item is very popular and has been on the market for a while. I've actually done hundreds of these in my wholesale work, and I love that they are just so quick and efficient to do. We're going to be using one of my favorite designs from my shop Of Love and Shiplap, and just your typical 1/4-inch neoprene coasters. Let's go ahead and turn things around. We'll get our measurements and we will get started. Neoprene car coasters are a pretty straightforward project. All we do is measure it, print our design, and press them. They do come in different thicknesses. This one is the 1/4-inch thick, but there are thinner ones as well. I personally prefer the thicker ones. I just think that they are nicer all around, and I do think that they sell a little bit better. So we're just going to get our maximum measurement here. We're not worried about this notch. I see a lot of people kind of obsess about this notch. It does not matter. Most designs that are made for car coasters are just circles because they're made for any circle coaster or other circle object. And it's really your discretion where you choose to put that notch. So we're going to be using one of the designs from my website Of Love and Shiplap, and I'm just going to have that notch end up being at the bottom of the design because the sunflower kind of covers that top half. So you'll see that in just a moment. But so we know how big to make this, let's go ahead and measure it. So we're going to line that right up in the middle, and we are looking at a little over 2.5. I'm not sure if you guys can see that. So we've got 2.5 plus 1/16. So you can actually enter that in just like that, or I have the decimal conversions on my website for you. But what I like to do is add a little bit extra. So the 5/8 is a little bit too much small. We want enough of a border that we can easily line this up. So I'm going to go with 2 3/4 inches so that we have a nice little border as our guide when we line up our car coasters with our design. So again, I do have a printable ruler for reference on my website that has each of your little lines, what the measurements are for them. For those of you who struggle with reading a tape measure, especially when you get kind of smaller measurements like that, but it also has the decimal conversions for your own reference. Let's go ahead and set up our design in Affinity Designer. We are working in Affinity Designer 2.0 on a Windows PC today. If you're using the 1.0 version or the Mac, your layout might look a little bit different, but all of the same steps will be followed. Our first step is to open up a new document that is set to the page size that we plan to print on. In the orientation, it will be printing with our printer. We will do this by coming to File and then New or New Document. And in this case, I'm going to be using letter size. Letter size is the smallest page size that I can print, and my car coasters will fit accordingly on this. I'm actually going to do 4 of them just so I don't have as much paper waste, but you can save the other half of that paper to be able to use that for nozzle checks and things like that. So I'm going to select the letter option. This is a preset, but if you don't have a preset, you can simply input the measurements manually underneath the Layout tab. You can change your document's units right there where it says Document Units. We want to make sure that our DPI is set to 300. Create Artboard should not be checked. And most importantly, underneath the Color tab, we want to change our color format to RGB/8, and our color profile should be sRGB IEC 61966-2.1. Your color profile here in the document setup panel is not the same as an ICC profile if you have one that was provided for you by your ink supplier. That is set in your print settings when you go to File and Print. It has nothing to do with document setup. Document setup is universal. The only modification that there may be is if you are using an older Mac where you're having some color discrepancy issues. The older RGB profile is Adobe RGB 1998. That may work better for you if you are using an older Mac and having color issues. Again, that is specifically for Mac computers. If you're using Windows, you likely just need to do your color correction. We have a whole video series on it. Be sure to check it out in the SubThat app. Now, I always like to make sure that mine has transparent background check marked, and you shouldn't see any kind of lines, like a blue line or a red line. Those would be margins or bleed lines, and you can just get rid of them on those respective tabs. If you want to update your document settings, just look for the update option. If I switch this for a moment, you'll see that these options here come up to save our preset or update it. You can actually do that so that in the future, you'll be able to just select that letter option and all of your settings will be ready to go. I've updated all of mine. It makes life a lot easier, so definitely take advantage of that. Once you have all of your settings in place, click Create. Now, I'm using a design that's specifically made for car coasters or coasters in general, so it is already round. But if I wasn't using that, then my first step would be to create an ellipse using my ellipse tool over here in the Tools panel. You simply click on the tool, click and drag to create it, come down to your Transform panel, and manually enter in your measurements. You do want to make sure that your aspect ratio is not locked at first. So in this case, we would do 2.75 by 2.75. And then from here, we could import any type of digital paper or graphic that we have and use it as a fill in this circle to clip our design. I've shown this process in so many videos. Check out our other tutorials. Check out our Affinity Designer quick how-tos. All of that stuff is in there. But digital papers, there are thousands of them, and they are definitely a great option for car coasters. Now today I'm using a design that I already have, so I don't need this particular step. So I'm just going to get rid of that. Instead, I'm going to come right to my Place Image tool, which is the little picture icon in our Tools panel, or you can go to File and then Place. And I am going to select one of these two. I'm actually going to be using both of them, but we'll start with the first one. And I am going to click and drag on my document once I see that downward arrow with the portal. Now, when you import something like this, if you see that there is some empty space around the edge of your design with your boundary box, you want to make sure to rasterize this to get rid of that. Always make sure that you already have this sized as big as you need it, because once you rasterize it, it's going to lock in that DPI. So if we go ahead and right click and then rasterize, we are now boundary box tight on the edge, and we can come right down to that Transform panel and enter in those measurements of 2.75 by 2.75. Easy peasy. Now I am going to print two of these, so I'll just take that and duplicate. And I'm going to line that up just below it. And then I'm going to bring in a second one and repeat the same steps. So I'll click that Place Image tool again, grab my whitewood version of this coaster, click and drag when I see that downward arrow with the portal. Once I get this nice and big, right click, rasterize to get rid of that negative space, come to my Transform panel, enter in those measurements. And I'll go ahead and line these up. So as you can see, that was pretty easy. You can move them a little bit closer if you don't want to end up wasting too much paper. I like to leave room for tape, so I do actually leave mine a little bit more spaced out. And if you're neurotic and want to center them, you can simply click and drag over to choose Align Center, and do the same thing on the other side, and they are all lined up. So once your page is all set, it is time to go ahead and send this off to print. We will go to File, Print. You are going to select the printer. In this case, I'm using my Epson SureColor F570 sublimation printer. Once you select your printer, you're then going to select properties. And now this is where you will adjust any settings that you have. If you have color correction settings that you need to do, that should be underneath the advanced options or the color management section. Once you have changed any settings, this is specifically for converted sublimation printers. Once you've changed any settings, be sure to save them. That way you can just select your page size and be ready to go. So for the Epson SureColor F570 Pro, we don't need to do any color correction. Everything with this printer is flawless. All we want to do is come to where it says source, and we're going to be using our sheet paper. And the printer's not plugged in at the moment, but it will update to our 8.5 by 11, which is also stated up here. So this should match, and this option should match as well. Like I said, the printer's not plugged in at the moment, so it's not popping up automatically. But that's it. By default, it should mirror, but if you have to set your mirror image setting, make sure to do that. I don't need a print preview, so I will deselect that. I'm just going to click OK, and then we will click OK again and send it off to print. So I've already gone ahead and trimmed up my transfer. You don't really have to trim it when you're doing a full bleed design, but of course you always want to make sure you trim it when you're doing anything that's not a full bleed design, just in case you got any ink along those edges. When your paper was printing, that might transfer. Just a good fail-safe, but I trimmed mine just to make it more manageable. We have our heat press already set to 400 degrees for 60 seconds. And because this is a full bleed design, we're going to want to have blowout paper on the bottom and the top. The top, of course, is to protect our platen, our top platen. The bottom is to protect our bottom platen. So I'm going to grab that first. And I just, for something small like this, I just like to fold this in half. I'm a big fan of these pre-cut sheets. These are from Uline. I get the 15 by 20 inch. I actually just bought one box. I bought one box of like 2,500 or 25,000. I'm not really sure, but it's more than enough. It was probably gonna last me the rest of my days. You're gonna want some heat tape to secure this because we are gonna need to flip this over. Make sure that's in your view a little bit. So I mentioned before about the notch. I don't want my notch to cut out of my sunflower, although you could do it that way. I want it to cut out of the bottom, so that is how I'm going to line mine up. Now we're really just eyeballing this. The main thing we're looking for is to make sure that everything is centered. Make sure it's centered, make sure we are as straight up and down as possible. I could use my laser level to check everything, but if you've been following us for a few months, Laura, the co-admin of Sub That, borrowed my laser level for a house project and I haven't gotten it back. And I'm saying this so that when she watches this tutorial, she knows I'm calling her out. All right, I'm gonna pull this a little closer to me because I can't see that far. Get everyone adjusted just right. Good. Okay, so now I want to go ahead and apply a little piece of heat tape on each one just to help it stay in place when we flip it over. I only have skinny heat tape at the moment, and yes, it makes me sad because I like the thick heat tape, but I ran out. So we just check and check again, trust but verify. So anytime you do something like this, I always like to use my nail to push it along that edge and press it under so that we can make sure we got it nice and strong hold for when we flip it over. Ooh, it does not want to stick. If your heat tape doesn't want to stick, you can use repositional spray.
we might need to do that. Okay, so we're going to use repositional spray. I'm going to show you how to navigate that in this situation, because we already lined everything up. We don't want to lift it up and put it back. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold this down just like this. We're going to lift it up. We're holding it down really firm. Get your adhesive spray. Never spray your transfer. Always spray your substrate. So I'm going to go like just a little bit of ways here. Just enough that I can secure it. And we will repeat. Since our heat tape hates us, it's because I said that I don't like the thin tape. It's retaliating against me. If you guys have seen my other tutorials, I pretty much always have the thicker tape. I think it's 20 millimeter. Like I said, I just ran out. And our last one. I'm just gonna flap this like this so I can make sure everything is centered again. Okay. So again, holding down firm. Light little spray. Okay, well that was fun. All right, so I'm gonna fold this over, and this is just gonna make it easier to flip over. I can hold my hand right there, bring it right off that edge, and put it back down. We always want to make sure something's centered when we have multiple pieces. We want to try and have everything as centered as possible to make sure we get the most even pressure. So we'll go ahead and slide that on up. Whoop, you guys rotated. We're having all kinds of problems today. All right, slide it on back. We are doing firm pressure. You can do medium, erring on the side of firm for 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 60 seconds. So as most of our sublimation projects are, we have our transfer facing down when I flipped it over, and our substrate is facing up. Remember that you only do it with the transfer facing up and the substrate facing down for a handful of items, and they are specifically ceramic, slate, and glass. Those are the items that you do that way. Everything else is done this way. Now I've got a little glue on my hand, which I wasn't planning for. But it's fine, we adapt. Also, if you don't have a repositional spray, it does not matter what it is, as long as it says temporary and repositional. None of those dries permanent, nothing like that. This quilt basting spray, easily available at most fabric and craft stores. I like this one because it doesn't gunk as much as some of the other ones I've used in the past. All right. Let's bring ourselves on down. And whoa, there's our reveal. We can actually just pop those right off. All right. I was looking for you guys. There we go. So these are our finished car coasters. Now my recommendation is to put them in a little little baggie that's about this size that can hold two, and have them sort of stacked on top of each other. It just makes the presentation really great. You can also find ones that have hang tags via Amazon. So definitely check those out if you happen to be selling at a vendor market and want to display them. All in all, I'm super happy with how these came out. Such a fast and easy project. Great for wholesale, great for one-off orders, great for consignment sales, or any type of vendor market. They're a nice grab and go option that has a good profit margin, and you can also incorporate them into other gift sets and bundles with other types of products that you may have made or purchased. Be sure to check out the full marketing guide for an in-depth look at different ways which you can market these, the design aesthetics that are favorable, and pricing suggestions. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.